20 weird facts about All Quiet on the Western Front you didn't know. Before we begin, understand this. All Quiet on the Western Front is not a war movie. It is a film about young men who were taught to believe in glory and learned too late that war has no use for belief. This is a story about innocence being dismantled, patriotism collapsing under reality, and a generation discovering that survival itself can feel like betrayal. Let's begin. Fact 1. The film was designed to destroy the idea of heroism. Most war films build courage. This one erases it. From the opening scenes, the film refuses glory. Soldiers are not brave icons. They are confused students, shaped by speeches they didn't understand. The purpose was clear: not to inspire enlistment, not to honor sacrifice, but to expose how easily young minds are prepared for slaughter. This was not accidental. It was the film's mission. Fact 2. The story is told through disillusion, not battles. Battles happen, but they are never the focus. The real narrative arc is internal: hope turning into confusion, confidence dissolving into fear, patriotism shrinking into survival instinct. The film tracks psychological erosion, not military progress. Victory is irrelevant. Only endurance matters. Fact 3. Teachers are portrayed as more dangerous than enemies. One of the film's most shocking choices is who it blames: not generals, not politicians, but educators. The teacher who urges his students to enlist does so with pride and zero accountability. He doesn't face trenches. He doesn't face death. He faces applause. The film argues quietly. The most lethal lies are delivered politely. Fact 4. The enemy is never demonized. The opposing soldiers are barely characterized. When they appear, they look identical. They suffer identically. They die identically. The film avoids hatred deliberately, because hatred simplifies. Instead, it forces the audience to see there is no enemy here, only boys wearing different uniforms. Fact 5. Death is treated as administrative, not tragic. Death comes suddenly, often without warning, often without meaning. No speeches, no heroic last words, no moral framing. Men fall, the war continues, paperwork updates. The film refuses to romanticize loss. It treats death as routine, and that routine is the horror.
Fact 6. Survival quickly becomes a source of guilt. At first, the soldiers fear dying. Later, they fear being the ones left alive. Each death subtracts another piece of who they were. Survival stops feeling like luck and starts feeling like theft. Why him and not me? Why today and not yesterday? The film doesn't comfort this guilt. It lets it rot quietly. Fact 7. Friendship replaces ideology as the only meaning. Patriotism dies early in the trenches. What replaces it is proximity. Men don't fight for flags. They fight so the person next to them doesn't die alone. Friendship becomes practical, urgent, fragile. The film suggests that ideology collapses under pressure, but human connection doesn't. It just gets smaller. Fact 8. Home is shown as emotionally inaccessible. When soldiers return home, they don't find relief. They find distance. Civilians speak in slogans. Teachers repeat lies. Families expect pride. But the soldiers can't translate the trenches into language anyone wants to hear. Home feels unreal. Safer, but foreign. The film makes a devastating claim. You don't return from war. You only re-enter places that no longer recognize you. Fact 9. Authority figures are portrayed as functionally irrelevant. Officers appear, orders are given, Ranks exist, but none of it feels meaningful. Leadership doesn't protect. Strategy doesn't save. Discipline doesn't matter. The war machine moves regardless of who commands. The film strips authority of mystique and shows it as decorative, powerless against chaos. Fact 10. Time loses structure inside the trenches. Days blur, nights stretch. Waiting replaces action. The soldiers stop measuring time by calendars. They measure it by meals, shelling, silence. The film dissolves chronology on purpose because war doesn't progress, it repeats. Fact 11. Empathy becomes a liability. Early in the war, empathy feels natural. Later, it becomes dangerous. To feel too much is to hesitate. To hesitate is to die. The film shows soldiers learning to suppress compassion, not because they want to, but because the trenches demand it. Humanity doesn't disappear, it's buried. Fact 12. Killing destroys language before it destroys meaning. After killing, the characters struggle to speak, not dramatically, not poetically. They simply don't have words. The film presents violence as something that empties language. Explanations feel obscene, justifications feel hollow. Silence becomes the only honest response. The war doesn't just kill bodies, it kills articulation. Fact 13. The enemy is finally seen up close, and it changes nothing. One of the film's most haunting moments forces a soldier to confront an enemy face to face. Up close, the enemy is human, terrified, familiar. This recognition should end hatred. It doesn't. Because understanding doesn't stop war, it only adds guilt. The film refuses the fantasy that empathy is enough to halt violence. Sometimes it only makes survival harder. Fact 14. Youth is shown as a resource to be consumed. The soldiers are young, too young. The film lingers on this deliberately. School books traded for rifles, lessons replaced by orders. Youth isn't celebrated, it's exploited. The film argues that war doesn't need experienced men. It needs bodies that haven't learned to question yet. Fact 15. By now, innocence is not lost, it's irrelevant. Innocence doesn't die in the film, it becomes useless. The soldiers stop asking why, stop imagining futures, stop expecting meaning. They exist minute to minute. This is not resilience, it's reduction. The film shows what happens when survival becomes the only value left. Fact 16. The ending refuses victory, because victory would be a lie. There is no triumph here, no lesson learned, no enemy defeated, no justice restored. The film ends not with resolution, but with absence. This was intentional. Any sense of victory would betray the truth the film spent its entire runtime building. War does not conclude, it exhausts. Fact 17. Silence becomes the film's final statement. By the end, words no longer matter. Speeches are gone. Explanations feel obscene. Patriotism sounds childish. What remains is silence. Not peaceful silence, not reflective silence. The silence of something that has taken everything it can take. The film trusts silence more than dialogue, because silence cannot lie. Fact 18. The title is an accusation, not a description. All Quiet on the Western Front sounds calm, neutral, routine, administrative. That's the cruelty. The title reflects official language, reports written far from the trenches, summaries that erase suffering with phrasing. While boys die, paperwork says, all quiet. The film turns that phrase into an indictment. If this is quiet, what does violence even mean anymore? Fact 19. Memory is the only thing that survives the war. Bodies disappear, Beliefs collapse, nations move on. What remains is memory, fractured, painful, incomplete. The film insists that remembering is not comforting, it is a burden, but forgetting would be worse. To forget would mean the war succeeded completely. Fact 20. The final truth. This film is about losing the future. This is the most important fact of all. All Quiet on the Western Front is not about death. It is about the future being taken before it can exist. The soldiers don't just lose their lives, they lose possibility, growth, becoming. The war doesn't only kill people, it prevents who they might have been. All Quiet on the Western Front doesn't argue, it doesn't persuade, it doesn't shout, it shows and then steps aside. If this documentary made war feel smaller instead of grand, if it made silence louder than explosions, if it left you uneasy rather than inspired, subscribe now for more deep dive film documentaries that strip mythology away from cinema's most famous stories. Because the most honest war films don't ask who won, they ask what was lost before anyone noticed.